organized learning environments, and schools in the cloud. Sugata retired in 2019 as a professor of educational technology at Newcastle University in England. He is the recipient of many awards and honorary doctorates from India, the UK, USA, and many countries in the world. Among them, the Devang Mehta Award for Innovation in IT from the Government of India, 2003, and the $1 Million TED Award 2013 from the USA. He's currently Professor Emeritus at NIT University. Welcome, Sugata. Can I request Sugata to please introduce the webinar?
Well, thank you all for attending. I notice there are a pretty large number of people from many places, really. That's always very heartening. You know, something about Zoom is that that you don't get the feeling of standing in front of an audience. You know, I've spoken at many different conferences, and there is a certain adrenaline rush when you get up and you stand in front of the mic and you see this big audience. That's what I thought to start with, until I realized that as you get used to Zoom and you begin to watch that little line at the bottom, the one which says participants, and as you see those numbers climb, you do get the same rush. It's amazing how human beings can adapt to new realities. Will we really get used to this? Is this the way we will meet all the time? Most of the time. When the vaccine finally gets the virus under control, where will we go back to? People often say, when we go back to normal, is that where we want to go? Isn't that what they said back in 1920, when the World Wars started, and by the time they ended, people began to say, when we go back to normal. But you know, and I know, we never went back to normal. We went into another world. The thing about time is that you never ever go back. You can only go forward. So, where are we now? And what is that forward? Where will we be in a month, in a year? Wherever that is, I know this, that it won't be the place we came from. COVID has essentially dismantled the old education system. It did so much more effectively than even a world war did to human systems. It changed things in a matter of days, in a matter of weeks. Teachers who said, we are not savvy with computers, we don't really understand the internet, etc. In a week's time, were setting up video conferencing. That's what COVID did and is doing. What is it doing to education systems around the world? It's surprisingly hard to get that picture. Surprisingly hard. We know this much. We know that teachers have moved online. We know that students have moved online. We know that online system sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Um, but is that what's happening in every country? What are the numbers? How different can things be? So we got together a group of students at NIIT University, and we put them together and said, can you set up a group of people who can give us some idea of what's happening? And here is the group. It's a diverse group of very interesting people. I know all of them very well. It was a great opportunity to get people like Yakov Echt here with us. Yakov's legendary in his approach to education and in his approach to what happens when you bring democracy and education together. How will that apply to our present circumstance? That is what this webinar is about. Then I posed a question to Javier and I said that, what about subjects where people have to do things by hand, like do an experiment in chemistry, something like that? How is that going to work online? Javier has been working with online education and he thought he might have the beginnings of an answer. I'm really keen to listen to him. And then there's Mabel. Mabel has been working with education, has been observing self-organized learning, SOLE, S-O-L-E, for years and years and years across Latin America and across many other countries. So Mabel put together her views on what exactly is happening today in that world and neighboring worlds. So that is the summary of what this webinar is about. As for me, what should I say? Well, I thought that the best bet is for me to say as little as possible and let you hear Yakov, Javier, and Mabel. So I'm going to do the following. I'm simply going to leave you, all of you, the panelists and the listeners, with a question, just one question. The question is about examinations. It goes like this. We know that if there's an examination, you're not supposed to cheat. What that means is that you're supposed to give the answer from your head, from your mind, or whatever. Not from a book, not from the internet, not from your neighbors, not from your mother, by yourself, whatever that might mean. If you don't do that, if you surreptitiously take an input from somewhere else, then you're cheating. There's an assumption that if I let you cheat, then you will score better in an examination. And everybody believes that assumption because, it's kind of obvious. So I thought of a question. If I gave you an exam, if you sat for an exam where I let you use the internet, then is it true that you will score more than what you would have scored otherwise if you were not allowed to use the internet? Everybody thinks that it is true. But I could not find a study which has established that this is true. But then we have countries around the world in this pandemic who are stopping exams and they're having ministerial meetings about whether to hold exams or whether not to hold exams. Why? Because the students, how do we bring the students physically together? Why do you want to bring the students physically together? Because then we can police them and make sure that they are not cheating. Why do you want them not to cheat? Because if they cheat, they will score higher than otherwise. How do you know that they will get higher scores if they cheat? Oh, everybody knows that. Come on. Is there a study? Not that I could find. So I'm going to leave you with this question. If you are allowed to use the internet during an exam, is it absolutely true that you will score better than if you were not allowed to use the internet? Think about it. I don't know if you'll get an answer to it, and that's not really the purpose of this webinar. I couldn't help leave this question because, I'm trying to do an experiment to figure out if that assumption is right or not. That experiment, unfortunately, is not going very well right now, but I hope it will go well in the future, and you'll hear more about it. So I'm going to leave you with that question. I see a couple of very interesting comments. Maybe we'll come back to it later on in the webinar. But at the moment, let's go back to Ritu Dangwal and on to Yakov.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Professor Mitra. Can I request Yakov to talk about the future of the meeting of democracy and education? All yours, Yakov.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And it's a great time to be with you. And thank you, Sugata, that you invite me to this meeting. I want to begin to, I want to begin with the model of innovation. The model of innovation say that in any group of people that we will choose, 2.5% will be innovators. So they will bring new ideas in any case. 30.5% will be early adapters. It means that they adapt early new ideas. But most of the people, 68%, will be majority. The majority will do the same things tomorrow, exactly what they do today, like what they do yesterday. So in this normal time of when the normal innovation graph is working, when we want to know about the future, we need to go to see what the innovators and the early adapters is create, what they are doing. And if we will know what they are doing, we will know a lot of knowledge about the future. And if we want to know about the present, we go to the majority. So if we want to know what happened now in the field, we go to the majority. If we want to know what will happen in the future, we go to the innovator and early adapters. But in a crisis time, like we are now, the area of the majority stop to function because the present cannot be like it was in the past. And we need to look for a new solution. And the new solution, it exists in this group. So the group, the future that was only yesterday, the future, it's become a present. And this is a huge opportunity to all of us. It's a huge opportunity that in this day of the crisis, we can see part of the future, especially if we look on the innovator and early adapters. And that's what I want to take you. I want to take you to the story of democratic school. The first democratic school that called himself democratic school I was founded in 1987 in Hadera, Israel. And it was after I left school when I was 16 without knowing to read and write. I'm dyslexic in a very deep situation, and you can hear it also in my English language that it's not great English, and I'm sorry, I apologize. But I built this democratic school because I want to build a school that works differently. And immediately I will explain you what it's mean democratic school and how it's working. But I will say that today we have 3,000 democratic school in more than 70 countries. And in the moment that the pandemic crisis begin, it was like a celebration of all the democratic school. We begin to meet one another. And if I will say the central things that happened, we begin to stop to work alone. It's become a network inside Israel, for example, between the democratic school inside Israel and internationally. It was fascinating that school from different places of the world begin to help one another. Students begin to work together. We build a timetable that common between the student in Japan, Korea, and Europe and South America. So it's become very, very fascinating time. But let's go back and say a little bit what is democratic education. And democratic education is, if you look about this cloud, this is the cloud of knowledge, and this is us. Every one of us is different. What it's mean different? We are not different only by our view. We are different by our talent, by motivation. And I think that when the idea that we are different, it's the beautiful idea that exists in the world. Because think about that we were the same, and all of you were Yaakov. That was really boring world. So we are different, but something happened in the industrial age, in the middle of the industrial age, when they build a lot of factories, and the factories in the industrial age use human being as a machine. And to make human being as a machine, it was complicated that we are different. So they try to make from all of us the same. And when they try to make of all of us the same, they build a factory that call it a school. And this school need to make the different people the same. So they take a group of students. That was the idea of this factory. They take the group of students in the same place, with the same teacher, in the same time, with the same curriculum, and they try to make them the same. And they push them inside the box, and that's look the normal old school. That was all the knowledge, but we deal only with this knowledge. But if you make zoom in inside the box, you see, wow, it's not a box, it's a pyramid. It's a pyramid inside the box. So the excellent is here and the weak people is here. And every one of us know people that was weak here, but there was excellent in another area of the knowledge. Especially the most famous person, I think, in the last generation that people think that is the smartest, he never was excellent student. Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein never was excellent student, not in elementary school, not in high school, and not in the university. And he says something that to me, it's the most important thing, maybe more than his relevant law. And he said that everybody is a genius. He said to us, the people from education, something very important. It's not exist 1% of the population that they are genius. It's not exist only 4% that they are gifted. And it's not 20% that they are excellent. Every one of us brings something unique to the world. Everyone. And school doesn't need to say who is better than whom. School need to help me to find my uniqueness and the uniqueness of all the people around us. In this case, school need to be different. In this box, maybe 20% can find their excellent, but we need to take the 80% out of the box, and they need to look for their strong area. And when they find their strong area, they begin to believe in themselves, they get energy, they believe that they can learn different things and also deal with places that they are weak. In this case, school become a learning community. What it means, we cannot build a school that you can learn everything that exists in the internet. What Sugata say, that we can learn with open internet, and I am sure that that's the way. But in this case, we cannot find teacher to any student. So we need to build a learning community that every student is also a teacher and every teacher is also a student. And that's what we try to do in the democratic education. But it's not only about learning. It's not about that everyone have a learning plan, different learning plan in democratic school. We also need to build a community that decide how we live together. What is the rule? Let's make the rule, the law together. Let's run the law together. And also we need to build a very strong dialogue, that it will be close dialogue between adults and student, between student to student, between teacher to teacher. And the full idea of the democratic education is human rights. So every content that we'll teach, it's from the point of view of human rights. In this case, it's to me, and it's become very clear in this time, it's become so clear in this time that democratic education is the missing piece of the puzzle of democracy at all. And when I say it's quite clear, it's because I get calls from all over the world, and people tell me the system stopped to work. Let's try to do it different. And we want to learn about what you are doing in democratic education. And I tell you why is the missing piece. And a lot of problems that we see today, it's part of the old traditional education. Think that in the last 100 years, more and more countries begin to call themselves democracy. But they adapt the education system from the time of 100 years ago that prepare people to live in undemocratic countries. So the traditional education system is to tell the student what to do, how to do, and check him if he done it. Think about this process. Tell him what to do, how to do, and check if he done it. And this, I think, Sugata, is connected to your question. It's to make you something that you try to all the time focusing about what the people above you tell you to do. And in this case, we think that today we need a totally new way of learning, that you choose what you learn, how to learn, and you check what you learn, and later also learning how to run community. All this is the missing piece today, from my point of view, of the new world that we are in front of him. And thank you. It was great, and I will wait to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yaakov. It was so true. It's so true. It's so very true. And we say that democratic education is the way forward. And like you said, we need to build a community, a learner community. And we all know that as mentors and as faculty, we all know that every student and every individual is unique. So that's definitely, and we need to have an open dialogue. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. You can pose your questions and we will have a question answer session. So we can answer then, put questions to the audience, as in the speakers from the audience. All right. So as we all know, in schools, doing things by hand like experiments, is an important part of the learning process. With online education, what happens to the practical work of experiments? We have Xavier, who has worked extensively in the space. I would request Xavier to share his experience of makerspace for online education. Over to you, Xavier.
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks Ritu, and thanks to the students of Educatomic project for organizing those webinars about the future of learning. And it is a pleasure to be here. Well, Sugata, I will try to summarize in the next 10 minutes something about you make to me to this webinar. Something really significant that I observed that happens during the confinement in our houses. And it could open the window for the students to start to make things remotely. Well, before the pandemic appeared in our lives and in our educational systems, students in schools love to do projects and do different tasks using their hands as a form of expression. Sometimes teachers took students to visit museums, cultural centers, libraries, and in those places, sometimes students carry out projects where they use their own hands to design and make different things. In my experience as an art and new technology teacher, and also as a coordinator of different educational projects at a public cultural center in Madrid, Spain, that one that Sugata you visit one time, students really enjoy doing manual things and love to do projects, even if it's inside the school or outside the school. So now we have our first clue, and it's that students like to make things, even if it's inside the class or outside the class. Could be at home, for example, or in a cultural center. Well, as we all know, during the recent pandemic, in most of the countries of the world, schools have remained closed for different period of times. That's depend on the country and depend on the continent. They close the time the schools were closed. During this period, and depending on the country, the type of school, and the educational stage that we are talking about, it has been trying to reproduce online learning on the way we teach children in person at the schools. We also know that that time schools were closed. Only very few countries and schools have online tools to be ready to use with the students. As something that we confirm later, only a few educational systems had like kind of online education system prepared to be implemented quickly and effectively. So now we are going to write to the second clue, and is that educational systems are not fully prepared to use remote learning with their students. So at what time suddenly schools close, students could not go to the schools, they could not even leave their houses or visit any cultural center or museums. Everyone's need to be at home. I think all of us will remember this day. However, at that particular moment in the history, the biggest maker movement I haven't seen so far began, and to this movement I have called the Home Fab Labs. You will remember that millions of students and family all around the world started to designing, building, making things and projects together. Students began making at home like art, music, food, editing photos, recording videos, dance performance, and so many handmade things. Students at that time, as I said before, they cannot leave the houses, and then there were not so many resources that they can use for the projects. So they need to use recycled materials and anything they have at home. In this particular moment, the necessity made creativity develop, and a new self-organized maker home movement arise from all over the world. So now we arrive to the third and last clue, and is that the culture of do-it-yourself arrived at home during the pandemic. Millions and millions of small self-organized home fab labs emerged during this period. So in this new framework that I am just talking about, I collect the experience during the confinement. Some interesting questions come to me, which I will try to summarize in one big question. So the big question now is how we will start to build the culture of making things remotely. What I mean, how we will pass from the culture of do it yourself to the culture of do it with others remotely online. Of course, right now, I don't have the answer to these big questions, but I can guess and suggest some ideas to start to solving these new challenges and start to promoting do it with others culture making philosophy remotely, using physical and digital tools. For example, the first idea that comes to me from that big question is that already during the period of confinement, people were inspiring on the internet to carry out things and projects. They share a lot of solutions compared to the lack of resources we have at that time. In this particular way, it was a collaboration of a lot of people, even if it was to carry out individual projects. But not only that happens, also during the confinement, people continue to carry out collaborative projects. You will remember documentaries, videos, songs, music, concerts where each musician of an orchestra played his instrument at home and composed a great symphony online. These kind of things were lovely. Also dance pieces where different dancers made small fragments of choreography in their homes, and then they formed a joint choreography and shared in a video on internet. There are so many examples that you can check in internet, but all of them share the same feature, that the final product of the collaboration is on a digital support. Well, so based on those experiences during the confinement, I would like to guess one proposal that perhaps we could start to develop in our school. I think we will need to seek digital and online support where students can work their handmade projects in collaboration with students from their own schools and in collaborations with students from other schools and all over the world. The challenge, of course, is how to connect students working remotely to generate projects whose final product is in a physical support. Well, I guess one solution for this challenge could be to use an augmented reality platform where different students from all around the world can work together in the same project. How we will do it? Students will carry out virtual simulations of their own handmade works that could be done at home or at the school. An example of something similar we find in science. Science use this kind of methodology for the design of medicines. Basically, they make like simulations of how proteins react when they link together in a virtual extent. This is something really simplified. So, but this is an explanation that in science, they use this methodology. So, as soon as we open a remotely working space for our students, I guess the next idea to develop will be open in schools and in the different cultural spaces of the cities, fab labs to make things and projects, not only to work physically, also where students could work virtually and online. That is spaces where we have instruments, where we can move physical objects to a virtual space and work remotely. And of course, in those places, we will need to have scanners, 3D printers, augmented reality elements, and also different objects to work manually, like elements from carpenters to work with the wood, or elements for cooking, to do food, you know, different materials to manipulate. So my conclusion, and I don't know if Sugata will answer your question, if we build those spaces in the schools or outside the school, we will give the opportunity to our students and citizens to build the culture of making things remotely and pass from the culture of do it yourself to the culture of do it with others, remotely and online. I know it's a big challenge, but there are different experiences all around the world who are working in this direction. So I think it's time for inspiration and for some action. So I don't know, Sugata, if I will answer your question.
Thank you, Xavier. That's indeed very encouraging, because I guess all of get stuck because we are so limited into our physical space. And what you talked about highlighting was the collaboration and the use of internet. And it's not just limited to yourself, but it's to others. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, let's hear from someone from the other side of the world. She will share with us some facts and figures on how the effect of COVID on education from Argentina and Latin America. Argentina has lately been in news because of the death of an important football player. So over to you, Mabel.
Thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Sugata Mitra, Jakob, for being part of this second webinar. I'm happy to be here again. I'm going to share with you some of the risks and consequences of school closures. This is a topic that is close to my heart since schools in Argentina have been closed for 8.5 months now, almost going to 9 months. So those of us who are involved in education are really worried about the consequences. I'm going to share with you some facts and figures that UNESCO has advertised or warned about in terms of consequences of school closures. There are, of course, social, economic, and psychological effects of school closures. The first one, the obvious one, and you've been all mentioning in some way these consequences, although it was not part of your main conversation. But the first one, interrupted learning. And of course, the toll is biggest in the underprivileged, okay? The low classes in societies around the world, in Argentina in particular, because it means less opportunities for learning and development. Okay, not everyone can replace the learning opportunities that school offers at home, right? Another physical consequence is poor nutrition, right? Children many times depend on school to provide them with food and healthy nutrition. And there are going to be serious consequences on that. In Argentina, we have 40% of children with health issues related to nutrition. 40% of the children are overweight, and we all know, all of us adults know, the consequences of weight increase on our health as we grow older. In many cases, it means actually not getting food every day even, right? This pandemic has taken a big toll on teachers as well. First of all, they were in the same exact situation as any other human being, trying to take care of their own health, their families, but also it meant a lot of confusion and stress trying to adapt and provide adequate response to the pandemic, their learners, their students, right? In many cases, if they were not familiar with technology for learning, they had to learn overnight how to put a course online, use a platform of some sort for free. As Javier said, not all schools around the world have the technology available to transition immediately to distance learning. Parents, of course, parents were extremely stressed in this pandemic. Again, the underprivileged are not prepared to operate as teachers and to mediate their children's learning. So that has been extremely heavy on them, right? And in many cases, we all know there are some world statistics that the ones who have taken the biggest burden are women. In many cases, if they are working parents, they've had to quit their jobs, turn down jobs, etc., with the economic consequences that implies. It's really hard on them to keep both jobs and children's education, and in some cases they have had to decide on what to take care of, right? In this, and along the same lines, there have been gaps in children's care. Okay, some parents who are health professionals, for example, have not had any help from the state or the schools to take care of their own children, and that has meant leaving children alone for a good part of the day. So children not being at school and not being with any responsible adult either, right? And it has had high economic costs, right? Also strain on the health systems, because in many cases, health professionals have had to stay home to take care of the children and had to give up on their professional duties, right? It has been a big, the pandemic has had a big impact on schools and school systems. Paradoxically, as Jakob very well said, school systems have always tried to provide massive responses to the whole population, and in this case, either because they couldn't come up with good solutions fast, or because they do not have the technological resources, they have left out many, okay, the majority in many cases. There has been a tremendous rise in dropout rates in Argentina. Out of a 13 million population of students, as many as 1.5 million have dropped out of school for good. And that will have consequences for decades. I think I've heard the other day that we took more than 60 years to recover from the previous health pandemic that took place in 1920. So there is, of course, when children leave school, when children drop out of school, there is an increase in violence and their exploitation. They are forced into early marriages, they go into child labor, there is teen pregnancy, etc., etc. All over the world, even those who are in the world, the best educational systems, there was a Freudian slip there, best, you decide, they have suffered the consequences of school closures in terms of the social isolation it implied, okay? In Argentina, there has been a recent survey, and 6 out of 10 children have reported a range of psychological symptoms because of school closure, or just the inability to be part of social groups, their reference social groups, right? There are, as Sugata has already said, problems in measuring and validating learning. I have I'm going to leave this to him. It's his area, and he can bring us better news. But what he said is absolutely true, that many systems, educational systems, have postponed forever exams, which are very significant and have a lot of impact on students' futures. So as a consequence, children suffer because of this, because of the lack of a clear future ahead of them, right? With the different systems, there has been disengagement with formal education. Maybe it's the signal we are waiting for to go into more democratic, more fab labs, more self-organized learning. There is a recent phenomena that has been taking place in Argentina, I hear in Brazil, in the United States, because schools are closed and parents want to offer their children something different from home education. They have created sort of alternative education groups. In Argentina, they are called blue schools, to mock the idea of the blue dollar, the parallel dollar that does not follow the official quote. But there is quite a bit of disengagement with the education that the school systems offer. So as a teacher, as an individual teacher, I have experienced, I have foreseen the consequences of this pandemic. I have done my best individually and also working with other colleagues to try and provide solutions. But we know that they are short-term. We know that they are not enough. We know that we need some more scale ideas and programs and implementations that will allow us to face 2021 or your next school term, whenever it begins, in a better way. So I'm going to take advantage of the experts in the room. Can you, Jakob, Sugata, Javier, join me back? I would like to share some questions with you so that we can start discussing what to do, how to redeem the wrongs that we have caused for our students, our learners all over the world. So, Jakob, if you're okay with it, I would like to start with you, okay? What is the number one piece of advice you have to give teachers, education systems, if you want to break it down to all over the world, with your ideas, your background about democratic education?
My suggestion let's begin with the teachers. I will suggest them to take lessons, and in these lessons, every time take another 5 students that they will help them to organize these lessons. So this is the beginning. If we go to all the teachers in the school, so when you make a teacher meeting, bring all the time 5 different students that will be in the teacher meeting. It will make a magic to everything that you are doing. And if you are in the Ministry of Education and you make decision, call also bilaterally, not every time another 10, 50, 100 principals, and ask them what they think. So I think the dialogue can begin today, and today it's easy. Because in the beginning, how you ask the principal what they think? It's complicated. They need to go driving. Here you make a Zoom meeting. It's easy. And you can see that today when the government try to tell people what to do, it's not working because they doesn't know exactly what happened in the field. So this dialogue between government and schools, between schools inside themselves and students and maybe parents, this is the most important advice that I can give.
Good. So it has to be exponential, adding people in the loop. And also it has to come from the teachers, okay? From people who know the field. It cannot be a solution imposed from a ministry or a government.
I will say it's deeply. Don't ask people above you what to do. Do exactly what you believe with the people around you. If you're a teacher, do it with your student. If you're a principal, do it with your teachers. If you are people from the government, do it with the people that you're responsible. I think we like all the time to say, oh, my manager is not okay, my minister is not okay. Stop. Do it exactly what you believe around you. And this is the time.
This is the time to do it. Yes, yes. Thank you, Jakob. Thank you very much. Sugata, now to you. You have been in the education field for 30 years now, and you have seen success, but you have also seen many mistakes, right? In the light of what I have said about the consequences of COVID and on educational systems, what is the one mistake we shouldn't repeat? I mean, we've had enough of that. We can't afford to make that mistake any longer.
Well, it's not an easy question. I could easier to make a long list of mistakes rather than take what was the biggest. But I think that Yakov actually came very close to pointing out what that mistake is. The reason why education systems don't change is because everybody is waiting for somebody up there to change it. So it doesn't change. So the mistake that I would, from personal experience, talk about is that you can make a model, but if you don't make in that model the method of implementation, if you don't integrate the method of implementation into the model and hope that people who like the model will go and do it, then that doesn't work. At least it doesn't work for about 20 or 30 years. So if you want to do it quickly, then you have to have the implementation plan within the model. And I'll just finish, but to give you a really good example is the vaccine. We've got the vaccine, 95% efficient vaccine. I don't know if we have the model that will take it to 4 billion people. You see what I mean? That's not built into the model of the development. I hope we have, in which case we're in good luck. But if we don't, then we would have made a mistake. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, very much alike. Javier, you've given me a lot of hope with this idea of making things at home, but I still feel that, we have to give lots of answers to our learners because they are desperate to come into contact with their friends. will virtual spaces do? Can we guarantee some sort of satisfactory results? Do you think that it will work? Will it be even better than face-to-face Fab Labs?
Well, that's not an easy answer. But yes, of course, as I already mentioned, no, there are numerous of examples of home Fab Labs online during the confinement. I mentioned some of them before, but I want to tell you an experience that happens to me. We built like in February a learning community project that I carry out in a media lab in Madrid, where I'm working on. And the core of the project was to meet different people of different ages and do different projects together. So we call this project From 0 to 99, because we have like babies be part of the project and persons like they have like 60, 80 years old. Okay, all mixed together, they will develop a project. Okay, the projects were about theater, music, gaming, so different projects. So the curious thing of we started the project physically in the lab, but the confinement arrived to our lives. And we need to finish all these different projects online at home. So Sugata, at that time, we couldn't plan in any implementation because the implementation came to us suddenly, you know? But the good thing of this is that the people were really, really happy. Also, people love to connect and stay in places, do things together in natural places, no, and contact each other and give a hug and kiss, no, and do things together. But surprise to us that also in that time, the confinement, the people have a lot of time also, no. So, but the people continue the project online. Even we have students from like 8 years old until people from 65, 85 years old, no? But they are still working with us, no, online, no? So I think it's the attitude, Mabel.
It's the attitude. Yes, I agree with you. But I think that you have just hit the nail on the head, man. And what happened with many educational systems and government is that they have done nothing apart from closing down schools, okay? And they have come short of providing solutions, answers, options, possibilities. Just closing the schools as a way to take care of the illness, whereas in the past, in previous pandemics, the solution was never to lock down healthy people. Okay, this is the first time, it's a worldwide experiment, that people who are healthy are the ones to go down into confinement. Okay, so but particularly, and I'm very, very sorry about this. Our government, national government, has done nothing to try and offer children a possibility to get different forms of education. That they have done things, okay? They have distributed booklets, etc., etc. We also have a serious infrastructure problems. Not everybody has connectivity. Most classes, 80% of the learners have taken lessons through WhatsApp. And that means many times using their parents' phones, etc., etc. So, but also this idea of not offering enough creative projects so that people can have a choice. Offering them a choice in this context would be vital for everyone's health, psychological health. So thank you very much, and I'm so happy to see that there are possibilities springing up all over the world. This is very heartening, and it's a really hopeful situation. So I think we are in good time for questions from the audience. Is that so, Ritu?
Yes, Mabel. So we have a series of questions. I would request the audience to post more questions if you have. So I would be reading one question which says, which education system currently working gives learners complete freedom to learn according to their interest and aptitude? Why not we try to embrace the life learning skills which prepares us to face the challenges and even deal with stress? In our education system, we bind learners in a set frame of curriculum and make them learn forcefully.
Jacob.
Okay, I will try because as I say, my English is not the best, and so I understand is the idea of the question, how to make the education system more freely, that the student can choose what they learn and also deal with their emotional things.
Right.
And to me, it's connect also to Mabel, what you say. I think the change of schooling, the old traditional schooling, is difficult and have a lot of pain because people tell us a lot of stories about the old traditional schools that we sit on the chair and not moving, and it was like a little religion. Oh, this is very important. And when they closed this temple that called a school, people very afraid, and it's make a stress. How we live without this place that we will sit 8 hours without moving? And I think that it's not a joke. I think it's really complicated. To the moving, it's begin. I think the idea that they closed the school and nothing happened, nothing come here and say, oh, this is catastrophe. I think it's important. And I think, yeah, the school will go step by step, that they understand that the children have the rights to choose what to learn and how to learn and when to learn. And but it's take time. And the time that it will take, it will be pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It will
not,
be painful.
it's not something fun.
Mm.
To learn in a new ways. I think it's fun to some people like maybe us that's sitting here, that we love to learn and we love to play with ideas, and we love that tomorrow will be changed than today. But most of the people in the world, if the world is changed, it's pain. And they lose their place of work, they lose their confidence in life. It's complicated, but the way that we are going, to me, it's clear. We go exactly what this question, the who asked the question. We're going to the place that it will be. To me, if we jump now 50 years to the future, and people will think that school was teaching students by a subject because they were in some age. It was connecting between content to age. They cannot believe in such a joke. It will be the biggest. You say, how they can do it? It's not clear that we are different and we need different learning plan. It's clear. Yeah, it's clear that we are different and we need different learning plan. But it will take time, and it's not will be fun. And not most of the people will say, we want to do it. Most of the people will say, we want to go back. And as Sugata say, it cannot, and this is our luck, it cannot go back. And so we will have a change, and it will be not simple change.
Thank you,
Yes.
Jakob. All right, I will take another question. I think, Sugata, if you could answer that. The criticism of one-size-fits-all education system is not new. Educationists have been talking about transforming the system. Teachers critique standardized assessments on paper. Even policies say the right things. They're making many models of alternative learning too across the world. What do you think is stopping the change in mainstream education? Are there stakeholders who don't want this change, or is it logistical barriers?
Well, I've often asked myself that question, and what I tried to do was to look back at history and find instances where the education system had actually changed. You can do that very easily because the education system hasn't changed all that often. So you will find only a handful of places where there has been a dramatic shift from education system A to education system B. And if you look then to say, okay, so how did they do it? I'm afraid you get not a good answer. In every instance, as far as I can make out, it was done with extreme force. Okay. It was the one system was broken, the other system put in its place, and the people told, you have no choice. If that is the lesson from history, then it's very depressing. So what are we going to do? If we want to shift the world from the regular system to democratic schools, are we going to provide an army to Yakov and say, now march from country to country and smash the system and put the new one in place? Because that's the only way that history has said you can change it. Is there any other way? Well, I would like to believe that there is a way, and that way can only be driven by not force, but circumstance. We have seen one such change now, haven't we? When we were planning this meeting, Yakov pointed that out. When we were saying, okay, what has COVID done to education? And Yakov suddenly sat up and said, it's destroyed it. So it's not always human force. It can also be circumstantial force. So what could such a circumstantial force be? We know what circumstantial forces can do. It can make us produce a vaccine in 3 months instead of 10 years. There was a way to do it in 3 months. So you might say, well, why didn't we for all these years? Why didn't we do it in 3 months? Why did we always take 10 years? Because, as they say, if you don't mind my saying, because our pants were not on fire.
Our pants were not on fire.
So that's, I wish I had a better answer to this, but I'm saying that if you want to really cause a change, and look at India, for example. India really needs a change in its education system, really. Everybody knows that. Everybody from the top to the bottom knows that the system needs a dramatic change. The method, shall we change the curriculum? But I never heard anybody say, why have a curriculum? Shall we make the examinations different? I never heard anybody say, but why do we have examinations? Etc. If we are pushed a little bit further, if we realize that we will actually not be able to compete in the world at all if we don't change, then maybe we'll ask those simple questions that will actually change the system. There doesn't seem to be any other way, unfortunately.
Sugata, I will suggest you another way, but it's imagine. I think that today the education system is very expensive. It's very expensive. It's not official. It's not. I don't know if official it's right. It's not working good. It's need a lot of money, and and I think that today we, step by step, we understand that we can make the education system much, much, much more cheap. And that's by connecting to the internet and by to make cooperation in different with people around the world. And in this case, I think I see something that can change everything. If now the countries will lose a lot of money and they don't have money to keep the old traditional education system, and in the same time it will go up education system that will do better solution than the old one, and it will be much cheaper. And I think that this is possible.
Oh, okay. Just a last word on that, because that was absolutely brilliant. That was pure Yakov. But let me put it this way: what he is talking about is not changing the education system. What he is really talking about is making the education system obsolete. Okay, if what he is saying happens, when that, and I believe it will, when the network takes over and all learning shifts to the network, what it will do 50 years from now, Yakov, is that when you ask somebody, what is your education system? That person will answer, what is an education system?
Okay, but in this tape, I say that it's not shift totally. It will be continue to be school. School will be a place that people will meet one another, but the learning process will be in the net. So it will be mixed between meeting with one another, and we have a lot of experience like this in the soul, in the how to MOOC. And it's much, much cheaper. Why I need to take a teacher and pay him a lot of money if my teacher can be in the web? And then I have a lot of hours of real teacher that have meeting face to face and make a close relationship with the student. So I think if we will find a new solution, not to 50 years, to these years, that it will be much cheaper, much better education, and much better relationship, and it's possible. To me, my point of view, it's possible to do it today.
Good. That's a solid positive note.
There is one question with Mr. Pawar Rajendra sir has asked, and I think it's absolutely in sync with what we're talking about. And he said, should we consider the possibility of letting parents teach their kids for a whole year of 2001? And then should they teach them how to live a full participative life centered on home and neighborhood tasks?
Well, that's kind of pretty much close to the Hadera model, isn't it? If you remember that diagram with the people talking. So, well, Yakov would be the right person to say.
Yeah, we can see it today in Israel, especially, yes, Sugata, here in Hadera, we are the city, the school is in a neighborhood that called Brandeis, and I live in this neighborhood, and it's in these neighborhoods now in these days, it's like I never see so strong community. So we are a lot of connection with the neighborhood, go with the dogs together, selling food to one another, bring food to one another, bring ideas that people different can teach one another. And I think that's what we are talking about, education cities. Education cities, the idea that the whole city become one big school. But the moving, and in this case, it's also economy, because the restaurant that cannot sell today their food, they can sell their knowledge. The restaurant can sell the knowledge to the families and tell how they can do. So we can have totally different new economy, the economy of knowledge. And in this case, yeah, I think the situation is going to this direction, but it will take step by step by step. And And I think, like Sugata, that it's a lot of pressure that, for example, what happened in our neighborhood, it's because we was closed, because we cannot go to different places. So it's become a community center learning. And that's, this is, I believe it will be part of the solution to the future, because the future will be, I think, mix of a lot of solutions, but it will be cheaper, it will be more collaboration, not isolated people that, like today, you sit in the classroom of 50 or 40 students, but you are isolated and you think only about yourself. The idea is how to make cooperation.
There are many questions, but the clock is ticking, and therefore I think we can close now. It was very interesting, and maybe we could have yet another webinar. So as we come to this end of this highly informative and interactive webinar, I will take this opportunity to thank our speakers for taking our time and sharing their expert views on a rather challenging but real situation. Also, I would like to thank the audience for their participation. And lastly, I would like to thank the Educatomic team, driven by NIIT University students, who did an outstanding job of putting this webinar all together. Thank you all and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.